had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless like a sheep without a shepherd. He said to the disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into his fields." Jesus called his 12 disciples together and gave them authority to cast out evil spirits and to heal every kind of disease and illness. Here are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also called Peter, then Andrew. By the way, look and think about these names. Simon, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, the tax collector, the IRS guy, James, Thaddeus, Simon, Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him. Let's pray. Man, God, for some of us, we've heard this text so much, it's easy to glaze over at this moment and wonder what's going to happen this week and thinking about how to solve the problems of last week. But would you in this moment quiet our hearts? God, we don't so much need information from you. We do desperately, desperately need revelation. How does this work out in our culture? How does this work out in the times we live in? How does this work out through my life? So, Holy Spirit, open our hearts to receive from you this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. So the shift that's going on, and let me just remind you where we've been. In chapters 5, 6, and 7, Jesus has been spending some time with his disciples, with his followers, with his people, kind of giving them some idea what this kingdom that he's introducing to them, that he's bringing into their world, what that looks like. So that happens. There's a lot of teaching. There's just kind of this stuff goes on in chapters 5, 6, and 7. And then he goes to chapters 8 and 9, and he shifts from teaching them about the kingdom to demonstrating the kingdom. And he does it in some really unique ways, because what he begins to do is he begins to go out and begins, as Matthew records it, he begins to touch the lives of people, and he does it in a way that really grabs their attention, because the thing about Matthew, there's kind of, in my mind, there's kind of two themes going on. It is a book that has, it's a book that's written in a way, it's a story that's written in a way that when the readers of that time read it, it was bringing to their world and to their lives good news, but it was doing something else. It was bringing a whole bunch of surprises. And as you read this book, for those of us who read it in our culture, we kind of like, yeah, we read this stuff, so what? Let's move on. Man, when they read it, I think they were stunned by what's going on. And chapters 8 and 9 is really that point. Because in chapters 8, there's these ministries of grace. And again, as you read that chapter, don't look so much at the miracles of grace, not ministry. Miracles of grace. Don't think so much about what the miracles were. Think about who they were to. They were the people that culture didn't think ever deserved a miracle. It was to the leper. It was to the Roman centurion. It was to the woman, the unworthy, unequal, the unclean. That's who he's doing miracles to. And they're probably reading this saying, that's what the kingdom is? And then he goes to chapter 9, and he does miracles of freedom. So if chapter 8 is saying, watch who he's doing the miracles to, chapter 9 is, look what the miracles free these people from, because these people, by definition, the world by definition is in bondage, and he's bringing to them this hope, this, you can experience freedom in your life. And so then he goes through the miracles of freedom. Freedom from sin. Freedom from sickness. Freedom that brings us to life. Freedom from that so I can see again. Freedom that so I can hear. And then he turns a corner, because he's done this not to somehow make the crowd look, or the disciples step back and say, wow, we got a heck of a leader we're following. He didn't do it so much to to astonish them. He didn't do these things. He was doing it to get them ready. And when he goes to chapter 10, he said, guess what, guys? Now it's your turn. You talk about a surprise. Did you see that list of names? That should stun us, what just happens here. So let's work through it. I'm calling this talk Mission Essentials because he's now getting them ready. He's taught them about the kingdom, 5 to 7. He's demonstrated the kingdom, who the kingdom reaches out to, how the kingdom sets us free, chapters 8 and 9, and now he goes to chapters 10 and said, now it's your turn. You guys are up. This is one heck of a mission trip. By the way, I'm jumping way ahead. This is actually, should be part of next week's talk. But when I go on mission trips, I generally go on mission trips with a view of, wonder I can help that mission place. What if this morning Jesus was standing here and said to you, I'm sending you out on a mission trip and here's your assignment. I want you to go out and heal everybody that's sick. And I want you to cast out all the demons that you come in contact with. Whoa. You mean I can't just replace the roof on that old building? It feels a lot easier. I think I'm going to tap out. Wonder if I filled out the wrong application. There's got to be somewhere else that's easier than this. You see what's happening? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on some of what he's doing here because we need to be here at the end of the book of Matthew when he starts to say, now, by the way, the church, this is your assignment. He's going to move it from, okay, this, but I want to pick up some just basic ideas about mission essentials. So the first one is just this. From this text, one of the essentials we must have if we're going to follow Jesus well, if we're going to be on mission with Jesus, if we're going to take this stuff that we've heard in chapters 5 to 7 and live out the stuff we've seen in chapters 8 and 9, if we're actually going to do that well, one of the first things we are going to absolutely need is we need the heart of Jesus. Now, let me unpack that a little bit. When this text starts in verse 35, you remember how it starts. There's a crowd, and Jesus is looking out, and he looks around, and he looks and he sees the crowd. First of all, to have the heart of Jesus, we must, first of all, be able to see what's around us. Now, I want you to think about what Jesus sees and what the disciples might have seen. And I hope as we go through this, you're asking yourself, what do you see in the crowd that's around you? Because you're standing in the middle of a crowd, not here. He has positioned your life in the middle of a crowd somewhere. What do you see in that crowd? So I'm guessing what the disciples saw is I don't know. I mean, these, I love these guys. That's why I wanted you to look at the names. And those of you who've read the story, you know how it goes. I mean, this was, these guys are pieces of work, man. So how might have they seen the crowd compared to how Jesus saw the crowd? Well, generally, when I look at a crowd, because I'm an introvert, the first thing I think is, how the heck do I get out of here? Like, where did I make a wrong turn? I think of that every time. And because of that, when I see a crowd, what I start to think is, these people are a bunch of weirdies. Oh, there might be a couple normal ones, but I have this, by the way, how do you think the disciples saw it? I mean, they're part of a program. We're hitting the jackpot. If we keep this up, we're going to become a mega ministry. See, it's too easy to view a crowd either as, I need to get away from them, or how does this crowd benefit me? What did Jesus see? Did you see what Jesus saw? Before I go into that, I just want to make this comment about seeing the crowd around you. We must move beyond how does that crowd benefit me, or how could that crowd somehow help my cause and my ego or whatever it is, to beginning to see differently. Because one of the things Matthew will challenge us with as we go through this, we must start seeing like Jesus saw, or we'll never have the heart of Jesus. Because it all begins in how you see the crowd around you. If you don't see the crowd correctly, you'll never care about the crowd. So what did Jesus see? Well, in one of the translations, not the one I put up this morning, but in one of the translations, it has this idea that when he saw the crowd, he not only saw that there's people around him, he was able to look beyond just what was just the people, and he was able to see something inside of them that was significant. And what he saw is people that were, as the one translation, I think it's New Living Translation, has this idea that they had problems and they had no idea where the solution was. Do you think the disciples saw it that way? How often have you looked at a group of people and in some level looked at them and said, I wonder what's really going on beyond the surface? See, there's been a couple times in my life where I've been so struck by that, it just pounded me. One of the times we were Christmas shopping, I was bored. I don't Christmas shop. I Christmas hunt, or whatever you do, guys do. And I was bored, and I sit down, and I'm just kind of zoned out in the middle of the mall while Joanne, and as I'm sitting there, it's Christmas season and all that, and so I'm praying to God, as I look at people, because I love people watching anyhow, and I'm like, just help me see what's going on. And as I'm sitting there, all of a sudden something come over me. And I started to see people missing the season, stressed out. We got to get these gifts. Kids falling apart, parents stressing. Beyond all that, I saw something different. But probably the time, if I was to pick one time when it really pounded me, I don't know how long this was. I didn't ask Joanne, but this is rewinding the clock a few years. But at one point after Corey passed away, we went down to, this is how much I remember about the details of this because of what was going on in my heart. It was within the first couple of months. We made this trip. I don't even know where we went in Canyon City. We went somewhere in Canyon City, and we took Corey's birth certificate and handed it to a person. And guess what we got back? A death certificate. We walked out of there like, this is real. No longer a birth certificate. We have a death certificate to file away at our... We left that place. We went to Chili's. As we sat at Chili's, Joanne and I hardly said a word. And I was just sitting there. I started looking at the people that were in Chili's that night eating dinner. And there was something inside of me that said, I wonder what's going on behind that makeup, behind those tattoos, behind those clothes, behind those smiles and all that. I wonder if anybody else in the room right now is experiencing the pain I am. You know what Jesus saw? He saw hurting people. He didn't see people that he wanted to run from. He saw people that needed him, that he wanted to engage, that he wanted to give good news. The other way of seeing, though, and this is the story of the Bible. Not only do we see beyond the surface and ask God, ask the Holy Spirit, God, just give me an idea what's going on. Help me see. We need to see differently. We also need to be able to see, and Jesus was a master of doing this. This is the story of God to the human heart. God always sees your potential long before you ever get there. So when you look at the crowd that he's brought around you, when you look at the people, whoever you are, if you're a construction worker, them are some interesting guys, right? How do you look at them? Do you see potential? He looked at a shepherd boy and said, that guy's a king. He looked at an orphan and said, that's my queen. He looked at Gideon out there who was scared to death trying to put away some grain, trying to get some food. He was freaked out and he said, you're a mighty warrior. Was he anywhere close to being a warrior? No. He looked at Peter when Peter was, but the only thing Peter was good at is sticking his foot in his mouth and said, you're a rock. You're a pillar. You know what he does right this morning? You guys got to get this, because if you're going to be on mission, you must hear what he's saying about you, even if you're a long ways from that. Because when Jesus looks at you this morning, he has the ability to see you here, but he's saying, here's who you really are. You must believe this. Because if you won't believe this, you'll never go on mission. I think this is probably one of those areas where God has worked on me. I rewind the clock. Some of us have been given the gift of being just critical and cynical, sarcastic. It's kind of a cool gift, isn't it? Let me rewind the clock. I remember walking on a work site, and this kid shows up. This is long enough. Remember the era when the style was droopy drawers? All right. Anybody that wore droopy drawers, get your hand in. We got to applaud you. That was a courageous thing to do. But this kid, I don't even know how this works. But somehow, he's wearing his jeans at half mast. They're down there somewhere. He has to climb a ladder. You may as well tie your knees together and say, get up the ladder. Let's see how this works. And I'm watching this. I'm like, this is a reality show going to play out right here. I'm going to watch this. And by this time, I'm so disgusted with the kid, I'm hoping he falls and hurts himself. What if I could have dreamed for that kid? Did Jesus see him that way? Or did Jesus see a kid that had enormous potential because he was made in the image of God? And if someone could have touched his life, just maybe. It was what Jesus saw that shaped Jesus' heart. It's that reason that he saw the potential of the crowd. He saw that person who was beat down, who was trapped in all his stuff, saying, you're a warrior. You just don't know it. And he goes to his disciples and he says, my heart is just moved with compassion. And some of your translations say pity. Pity sounds like a kind of a weird way to respond to that in our culture. It feels kind of cheap. But I tell you this, what I do know about the word compassion, it grips you so deeply that it pushes you to action. It isn't just some temporary feeling like, oh, I feel so sorry for you. And you go home and it's gone. It shapes the decisions you make. And now that I spent too much time on my first point, let me move to my second one. What do you see, though? People, I just want to say this before I move on. Doesn't it fascinate you that the idea behind what Jesus saw is these people had problems, had no idea where the solution was? Who was he talking about? Religious people. Now, doesn't it become kind of obvious that if religious people have a problem and they understand they have the problem, that the answer would be in that culture the synagogue, or maybe Rabbi Abram or somebody. Does that tell you something about where the religious system was? It was not seen as a place where I can get answers for the brokenness of my heart. You know what breaks my heart about the Church of America? When our country falls apart, do people ever look at the Christian community and say, they have the answer, I'm going there? Amen. Or do they say, wonder if the government can fix the problem? Maybe the health department. Well, good luck with that. Here's our world. People are not sure where to turn for the answer. That's why we need to be on mission. Amen. And they're hoping the government fixes it. They're hoping the health department fixes it. And when that doesn't happen, and by the way, it won't happen because it doesn't have the capacity to heal and fix the broken hearts of our world, when it doesn't, where will they turn? More addictions? Maybe just a stronger chemical so I can kind of exit out of my life. Or will they turn to you because they've seen you in the crowd and they say, that person knows the answer. I know it. So, Jesus, first of all, sees, and it shapes his heart. And his heart's moved to action. And the action, what comes out of that, the compassion in your heart compels you to do what? It's the next point, an essential for mission. The very next point is it compels you to start to what? Go out and recruit workers? What are you supposed to do? How do you reach the crowd? Pray. Wait a minute. Really? That's the starting point? Why is that one of the last things I do? Look what he says. Well, he said, pray that the Lord of the harvest will send forth workers. He didn't look at the disciples and say, you know what, you guys need to go on a recruiting program and you better figure out your speech and you better get this going because we got a problem. And he approaches all this with a sense of reality that we need to embrace. He said, here's the reality of your world. There is a huge harvest and there's very few workers. He makes a comparison that's supposed to get our attention. He doesn't candy coat it. He doesn't say, well, you guys are doing what? Here's the truth, guys. This is huge. This is enormous. You know what this is? There's hardly anything here. So pray. The one who's actually in charge of the harvest starts to get workers ready. So the first thing is we need to have a heart as Jesus. The second thing, we need to be engaging in prayer for workers. And I just want to make this comment about prayer, and then I want to talk about workers. The idea of prayer is simply this. If you go on mission and it isn't bathed in prayer, it isn't founded in prayer, it isn't motivated in prayer, it isn't somehow grounded in prayer, just don't go. Don't waste your time. I know that's kind of hard, but I really believe prayer is that essential to mission. Amen. What are we to pray for? Workers. Okay, so who's a worker? So, because I like picking on him, I'm going to say Alex is a worker. Why? Well, he graduated from college. He's got to know the answers. I mean, look at him. He even looks intelligent. And here I am. I didn't do college. So I can kind of put myself on the side and say, I don't have training. He didn't ask for spiritual experts. He didn't ask for spiritual entrepreneurs. He asked for workers. And if you chase that word down in the Greek, it's just somebody that's going to show up and do the job. It is so easy for us, though, to say, I don't think that's me. I don't know the answers. You don't know how little I know about the Bible. I'm trying to figure out and stay afloat in my own life. Are you kidding me? He has you in the crowd for a reason. You're there to be a worker. The other thing that's interesting about this text, he said, pray that the Lord of harvest, in the version, sends out workers, not trains. You know what that by definition means? When he looks at this group here this morning, he sees workers that are ready to go. Do you know what send out means? As best I understand this, in that language, it means we need to kick them out and get them going. It's like we got to light a fire under these guys so they go from just being people who are okay with just being part of something, a system, to where they start to embrace their role in the world where I'm a worker. I'm in a crowd. He placed me here. And he has me here to make a difference. And we begin to embrace that role. Here's the thing. I want to go back to chapters 8 and 9 and frame this. What it means then by definition to be a worker is a person who understands that if I'm a worker in this mission program that Jesus is sending us out on, or in the case of those disciples, when they thought of themselves as being workers after they had just watched the miracles of chapter 8 and 9, I think they understood this. When I go out, it means I don't get to pick my audience as much as I just go where he asks me. And in the language of chapter 8, that means I go to some people that are really disgustingly unclean. I'm willing to reach out. I'm willing to touch that. I'm willing to go to the people who are marginalized. I'm willing to go to anybody he sends me because I find myself in a conduit of grace, just like he was. That's why the mission happens after he's demonstrated how it works. Amen. But I go with a message of freedom. So I go demonstrating something, and I go telling something. It's a message of it's being thrust out to proclaim the good news and to demonstrate the good news. Let's go to the third one. The third thing I like about this, the third thing he says, here's another surprise. I want you to hear again how the language of the verse says. He says, so pray that the Lord of the harvest, pray that the Lord who is in charge of the harvest, ask him to send more workers into his field. And then it goes this way. And he called together 12 apostles, and he called his 12 apostles together and gave them. Here's what you need to know. When you start to see the crowd like he does, when you start to develop the heart of Jesus, and when you start to pray that he sends out workers, and you're okay if that worker, that definition includes you, you know what he's going to do to you? He's going to give you something. He's going to give you a gift that enables you to do exactly what he's asked you to do well. You need to know that he doesn't send you out without giving you the ability to do that well. He gave them. They didn't have to go on their own strength. They didn't even have to go on what they thought would work. He equipped them. And I just want to mention 3 gifts that I think the disciples got and we get. It's a gift of confidence. Peter, James, John got that gift. Matthew, the tax collector, got that gift. Judas got the gift. You get it. My point is this. Do you understand the immense risk he takes on us when he says, I'm going to equip you to go out and do it well? He knows we can go out and do it for all the wrong reasons. He knows we have egos. He understood this group of guys. He knew the possibilities of them screwing it up so royally was unbelievable. He knows the possibility that you might. But he gives you a gift to go out and touch a world, the gift of confidence, the gift of purpose. Because one of the things that happens in our lives is, and I really think about this, and I'm not an old guy particularly. I'm starting to get there. I mean, I will admit that the end of the runway starting to, when you're in your 20s and 30s, there's not even a runway. And it doesn't feel like it. And then all of a sudden, you're creeping up on 60. Ooh. Like somewhere out there, feels like we're speeding along and we're running out of space here at some point. Did my life count for anything? Not are they going to build a shrine for me. I think about Jeff, in one of his talks here, gave an illustration. I forget exactly. There was this storm and washed up on the beach where a bunch of, shells or something, some live creature that was on. And this little kid you've probably heard this, was walking along. I mean, it was just thousands of them. And he's tossing them back in the water. And this kind of cynical older guy looked at him and said, "What are you doing? It's not going to make any difference, kid." He picked up one, threw it in, and said it made a difference to that one. See, one of the reasons we don't engage in the harvest sometimes is there's so many on the shore. We're not even sure it matters. And so we let ourselves get caught up in our security, let ourselves get caught up in our careers, our agendas, our stuff. It matters to the one that gets tossed back in. It matters to the life you touch. Amen. I really started to think about this differently. One of the things I started to do when I go into the construction sites, I make it a routine every day. Every day I show up. If there's any other construction worker there, when I pull in, and first of all, we got some rare birds in the construction field in Custer County. It's probably true nationwide. We especially do here. This is a cool, rough. I love these guys, but I make a point of going around and finding out about them, and then every day, when I pull up, I go around and talk to them. There's this one guy. His name's Phil. He's a carpenter. He's been I've worked with this guy for I don't know how many years. Good at what he does, especially good at what he does. One of the most closed individuals I've ever had to engage. I mean, there's just, "How you doing, Bill?" "Good." And he's one of those guys, you know how construction workers can be. We can get out of the truck and then we drink a little coffee. And this guy gets out and he's focused, man. I mean, stuff's happening. The tools he's going. And you just don't mess with him. He's just Phil the carpenter. And I started in the last few months, I walk home, "Phil, how you doing?" And he told me in he said, and he finally engaged. He said, hey, how are you doing? I said, well, this and this and this is happening. And I said, I'm becoming a grandpa for the first time and all this. And I said, do you have kids? I mean, I've worked with this guy for years, and I didn't even know if he had kids. As far as I know, I didn't even know if he had a wife, especially. I mean, he's just that guy. He said, yeah. And I said, well, how old are your kids? And he's starting to say, all right. The next time I talked to him, he said, can I tell you something? He said, one of my kids, I think his youngest daughter is 14 years old. And for the last 2 years, since she was 12 years old, has been going through this thing of seizures. He said, we've tried all the big shots, the best in Colorado. They don't have a clue what's up. And I said, yeah, we kind of have some history in that. And so both of us had to get back to work. A few days later, I walked over. He was back at the job. He jumps around some, and he was back at the job. I went up and said, Phil, how's your daughter doing? And he said, man, it was this is a Monday morning. He said, man, it was a terrible weekend. It was just like one of those weekends where we took her to the hospital, and we went to pick her up because they thought they had her meds figured out, and then she had a seizure while I was on the way to the hospital to pick her up. And he said, we just can't gain any traction. He said, we got one kind of thing left. And he said, this option, but he said, we can't afford it. We can't do it. I said, Phil, I'm going to raise the money for you so that becomes an option. I don't care what it costs. This stoic, closed man on a job site, which we never do this on job site, guys. Those of you who are concerned, we don't do this. Stood there with tears running down his face. Said, I can't believe you told me that. You know what's interesting about Phil and my relationship? Is he a follower of Jesus yet? Man, God's reeling him in. I mean, he's got his hooks on Phil. I don't even think Phil knows it. That's what's so cool about it. So I don't have any great story to say there was this amazing conversion there on the job site. I tell you what I do know. If I beat him to the job site now, when he pulls up, he comes and finds me. I don't have to find him anymore. Guys, we just need to be workers. We need to step out of our own little worlds and say, what the heck's going on in your life? The gift of purpose. Maybe when I'm gone, maybe someday Phil will be there. What if I get to heaven and Phil's there? Wouldn't that be just the most, for that one person that got tossed back in? You matter. He gives you the gift of significance. He gives you the gift of purpose. He gives you the gift of authority. This one makes no sense to me. I'm going to pick this up at the end of the book. It would make a lot more sense to me if Jesus said to his disciples this, I'm going to give you the power to take on the challenges you face. That makes total sense to me. I'm sending you out. You need to go equipped with my power so that if you come up against a situation, you're stronger than that force. You're bigger than that thing. You have the answers. You have the power to... He didn't say that. He said, I'm giving you the authority to do it. Power and authority are two completely different things. I'm not going to take it apart this morning, except the authority gives you the right to act for him on the situation, not just the power to do it, but the right. He's saying, you guys have it. You don't need to be asking me about this stuff. I'm giving you the authority. Go do it now. You represent me in your broken world. For those of you who want to fast forward to Matthew chapter 28, we're going to get there eventually. What's he going to give you? Let's move on to the last one. The power of a team. I talked about this. Let me just do this because some of you weren't here the last time I talked about team. Remember the think team talk? I said it this way. I want to say it again. I want to just take apart a few things about the team, and then I'll let you go, because it is getting warm in here. I said it this way then. If you were to climb a hill, if you were to pick a hill in Texas and climb that hill, probably what would it require is you just to drive up to the hill, walk up the hill, and walk down and leave. You do it by yourself and be amazingly successful. If you were to climb one of these 14ers compared to the highest hill in Texas, you got a different challenge. Now you got to get a day pack, you got to get some water, you got to get some, you know what you could still do? You can still climb this by yourself. You don't need anybody to climb one of these. It's done all the time solo. But if you climb Mount Everest, impossible to do without a team. So if you don't find yourself on a team, I can tell you the size of hill you're climbing. It's not very big. You know why he sent them out as a team? Huge. It sounded like Trump. I'm so... Doesn't he always say that? Huge. It's huge, man. Wow. We ought to just shut it down after that. Guys, it's huge. There is no solo going to get this. The only thing that has a chance at the huge is a team. The only thing. We have been far too willing in America to do this Lone Ranger stuff and wondered why we're in the mess we're in. You don't do it alone. You can do Texas alone. You could do these alone. You're never going to take on the big challenges and win them alone. Ever, ever. The stuff God is asking you to do, get a team around you, because I promise you, his dream for you is so big, you don't even have a chance to do it by yourself. But I tell you, with the team, you can. Here's what I want to say about team, though, so that's the team concept, the power of team. By the way, let me just, for us here, for those of us, we need a team to lead children's ministry. We need a team to reach out to the teenagers in this. We need teams so badly. Let's form some teams and let's get them. Let's go. I'm not going to say that. We're going to form teams because that's our job. That's what we're asked to do as followers of Jesus. That's what people who are on mission do. What was I going to say? Oh, this. The list of names. Here's what's stunning. Here was a huge surprise. If you were a person who lived in the area where Jesus done his ministry, knew the persons that Jesus done, knew the circles he ran in, the synagogues he visited. You remember when this text starts, he's going from synagogue to synagogue, and as well as out in the open, he's doing this traveling thing where he's going to their places of worship, and then he's going to other places, and he's just teaching and healing and doing his stuff. If you were to assemble a team, I promise you, not a single name on there would have made it on most of our teams. And there's some reasons for it. And here's what's stunning about that team thing that he puts together. There must have been some interesting stuff happened on that team that we'll find out later. Because when I assemble a team, I will go out and try to find people that have the same ideas, same back, kind of the same, not Jesus. Like the political diversity on that team, I wonder if it would work in our American culture. You have Matthew, the tax collector. Let's raise. So he's the guy that's raising your taxes. And then you got a zealot on there? I mean, that's the whacked out part of this and the whacked out part of that on the same team together. How do you build team with that? That list of names is so diverse. It's stunning. Here's what I want to say about team. When you build team, the power of team is getting different ideas, different things in it, because it becomes the strength of it, not the downfall of it, if it's done well. And there's moments, I was talking to someone, was asking about our particular group here. And he was saying, like, who are you guys? I don't have a clue who we are. I mean, you talk about because, I mean, you know the gig. Some of us came from Mennonite background. So we bring that lens into our world. And then there's the Methodists. And there's a recovering Baptist. Just kidding. Just kidding. Everybody relax. And then just to make it real interesting, we got them Pentecostal charismatic types. Don't you love it? Because he's going to make us into something so huge because we're not cut out of the same mold. And we see him in so many different ways. We have so much room to grow and challenge each other and become something that is so beautiful. Here's what I just want to say, kind of wrapping up this talk. If Jesus was here today, would your name be up there? Here's what I want to say to you. Your name is up there. It is amazing when you think about he gave authority to a guy that would eventually betray him to go out and represent him. How scary is that? Guys, he wants you on his team. He invites a lot of people on his team. It is amazing how messed up some of our stories are and how powerful the grace of Jesus Christ is in redeeming us and bringing us into his team to work together, to be on mission for him. That's why we can look past who you voted for. Or can we? That's why I can look past how you dressed or the tattoos and piercings or whatever it is that usually define us and separate us. Because he brought us together on mission to redeem a broken world. He put us in a crowd to look around and to see what's actually going on and to dream for that crowd. You could be this. I know you're a long ways away, but it's not you could be. You are this. He didn't go to Gideon and say you could be a mighty warrior. He said you are one. He didn't look at Peter and say, you could be a rock. He said, you are a rock. He's looking at you this morning because he needs you to engage the crowd he's placed you in. Can you hear what he's saying to you about who you are? And then can you begin to pray, God, please. Our country is so freaking broken. I'm willing to go. I'll go. Just give me the gift. Just equip me with who you are. And I'll go make a difference for you. I'll be your worker. I tell you the stories that come from this group here. I know this with all of my heart. It's going to be stunning when we get to eternity to see how many people were given another chance at life because of you. Zach, would you come? I'm just going to invite you, if you want to come up here and pray, just whatever God lays on your heart, if you want to do it where you are, if there's going to be a prayer team up here, if any of this, you want to pray with somebody about it, maybe how you can get involved more, whatever, feel free to come up and pray. If not, do it at your... But guys, let's go out and make a difference in our world.
Dwelling place, no Lord Almighty, for my soul longs and even faints for you. And for here my heart is satisfied within your presence. I sing beneath the shadow of your wings. And better is one day in your courts, better is one day in your house, better is one day in your courts, thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts, better is one day in your house, better is one day in your courts, thousands elsewhere, the thousands elsewhere. And one thing I ask, and I would seek, to see your beauty, to find you in the place your glory dwells. And one thing I ask, and I would seek, to see your beauty, to find you in the place your glory dwells. Better is one day in your courts, better is one day in your house, better is one day in your courts, thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts, better is one day in your house, better is one day in your courts, thousands elsewhere. And my heart and flesh cry out for you, the living God. Your Spirit's water to my soul. I've tasted and I've seen. Come once again to me. I will draw near to you. I will draw near to you. Better is one day. Better is one day. Better is one day than thousands elsewhere. And better is one day. Better is one day. Better is one day than thousands elsewhere. And better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. And better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts. Thousands elsewhere than thousands elsewhere.
God, open our eyes, see the crowd as you see them this week, and move our hearts and light a fire under us. God, I need a fire under me. You light that fire in all of our lives this week in a new way. God, I just believe we're getting right close to the harvest. And I just pray for an abundance of souls in the kingdom of Jesus Christ from this area, from this community, because of the workers you are sending out. And I thank you for that. Thank you for the privilege of being you.